Tom has a few more experiences than I do, but from last year to this year, definitely a different experience.
No, it's up at his crazy media day. I'm sitting here in an empty room. This is very different than the other 9 experiences.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name's Dan Barrero, and I'm joined by Justin Guard, Lori Fisher. Very excited about Super Bowl number 55. Will set the table for us. Hi, Lori.
Hi, guys. How's it going?
Doing well.
Good.
Yeah, Tom Brady in a room by himself for, this is the 10th time, but first time probably all by himself, right? Taking selfies. It's a different experience.
He looks good. Hair looks
does.
good. I know that much.
43.
I wish I had hair like that.
Me too. It's a different experience for everybody. Super Bowl Sunday is just 2 days away. We know it's the Chiefs versus the Buccaneers. Dr. Fauci, though, is making sure to reiterate, don't let the Super Bowl fun be a super spreader. He says just lay low and cool it. What are you two looking most forward to come this Sunday? Dan, you go for it.
Well, you kind of have touched on it already, and even with what Brady had to say, besides the game itself, which I'm hoping we can get to here a little bit too, it's, let's face it, for a lot of people who watch the Super Bowl, they don't really care that much about the game. I mean, there are a lot of people who bet on it and care for that reason, a lot of people who are hardcore football fans, but the Super Bowl has become a spectacle event, right? And a lot of people watch it because that's the tradition, and they just want to see how the spectacle plays out. And it ain't going to feel, I don't think, like a spectacle this time around. You don't have the pomp and circumstance.
Right.
You don't have all those, the mass media jackals talking to the various players all week. You don't have the number of people who are going to be involved in the Super Bowl halftime show. All that kind of stuff we associated with it, Justin, isn't there. And to me, that means it feels more, this Sunday, it's going to feel more like a football game.
And I think for the teams it will too. Kansas City's coming in, I think, on Friday as opposed to being down there all week. And even watching the game, you're going to watch the game, but not every company that we've come to know and love is even doing a Super Bowl commercial, right? So that's going to be different as well. A lot of them are donating the money, which I think was $5.5 million we figured out for a 30-second ad to different causes and different charities. So it is going to be very strange. There's going to be 22,000 people in the building. Tampa obviously has the, quote, home field advantage. Right. But, yeah, it's one of those things we're probably going to remember forever, I would imagine. Although I heard there might be a little rain in the forecast as well for Tampa on Sunday, which could make things interesting. But, yeah, it's just like everything else right now. Nothing is the same. You're not going to have a huge party. You're not going to have that same fellowship. I'm sure people have a lot of traditions around the Super Bowl with friends and family that probably aren't going to be the same this weekend.
It's hard to get past. There are other players playing besides the two quarterbacks, even though it's such a sexy angle, and it's all very understandable why it is the angle as well. But what we find out when we emphasize these matchups is often it's another player or another position that ends up being big. And to me, if indeed Tampa's going to win this, it's going to be in large measure because their defense, which I think can be very disruptive, and was with Aaron Rodgers. And he had a good stretch, but it disrupted him. It got to him several times. Mahomes is even more mobile than Rodgers, I think. But that, to me, is going to tell the tale for Tampa. If they can actually put some kind of pressure on Mahomes, and if Brady gets it done, I've told you this before, Justin, I think you could argue this would be the crowning achievement of his career at this point. Because let's face it, it's all extra for him right now. His legacy is already cemented.
And that's why I continue to pull for him, because I just want to see how much further can he go, right? And with a different team, different group, we talked about it last week, it's incredible. And I agree with you about Tampa's defense. Kansas City missing both of their tackles.
That's big.
Patrick Mahomes might have a toe injury still. Like, that could definitely factor in.
As Dan would say, we're happy for them. Let's talk about other quarterbacks. It's been a week since Deshaun Watson requested to be traded from the Houston Texans. What ends up happening to him, and depending on what happens to him, how could that impact the Vikings, Dan?
Well, this probably, as entertaining as it is to talk about speculation of getting Deshaun Watson, that's happening in towns all over the country because he's got a chance to be a great quarterback. He's been in a mess there. He's young. He's 25. He's got his whole life, his whole career ahead of him. Maybe play another 20 years, the way Brady's doing it. But is it realistic that he's actually going to be dealt? I don't know. I'm in the camp that says I would do everything I could to go after him for sure. And as much as I'm not as big a Cousins guy as you, I grant he's played better than maybe I even thought he could. But I still don't, put it this way, when he does something special in a big game, which he did against New Orleans, I'm surprised. And I still don't completely trust him. I still think there's just a limit to a ceiling to what he can do on a regular basis, especially at the end of games. So I think you got to go after it, but you got to find, obviously, another team to take Kirk Cousins to make it even possible.
Well, that's the key. And as president of Cousins Condos, as we say on the radio, I agree with everything you said about Kirk. Obviously, I like him more than you do. I think he's been pretty good here. I think he can be better here if they somehow protect him, which is an ongoing thing that we've talked about forever. He's not an off-schedule guy like we've known. But if the Vikings are even going to think about it, the biggest domino is what are you going to do with Kirk? And there's really one team for this quarterback carousel. Everybody wants in on Deshaun Watson, whether or not they can get him. Carson Wentz is another interesting one to think about because he apparently wants out of Philadelphia. You don't really know what he is.
And you can get him cheaper. If he's available,
younger.
you can get him cheaper.
You can get him cheaper, and he's younger. With Cousins, we're talking about one team, aren't we? We're talking about the San Francisco 49ers because of the Shanahan connection. There's always been that rumor. There's always been that thought that Kyle might like him. They might be able to work something out. They apparently want to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo because they were in on the Matt Stafford sweepstakes. You've covered the NFL a long time. I don't ever remember an offseason of quarterback movement that it seems like we're right in the middle of now. But for Cousins and the Vikings, it's really just one team. But I would move heaven and earth to make that phone call to San Francisco and at least kick the tires, as we like to say, on whether or not that's even possible. Because then maybe you can go get Deshaun or draft somebody else.
The comeback is always, but then you're giving up so much draft capital. This team has too many needs. I don't. If I can get a 1 for Kirk, which may not be possible, but if I could, I still do it because he's the kind of player potentially that's going to make a lot of other players look a little bit better.
Good quarterbacks can paper over everything.
This is again a 10-year move if you can do it. Realistically, is it going to happen? No, it's probably going to be Kirk.
Fun to talk about, though.
Who San Francisco likes because he is durable. The one thing you can say about Kirk, he never gets hurt.
Enough said. Let's talk basketball. The Timberwolves lost against the Spurs on Wednesday night, another game where they had a hefty lead and then blew it. They stay on the road the next few days. Meanwhile, the Lynx are adding some big-name talent to their roster, including free agent guard Kayla McBride from Las Vegas. Justin, how about you start with those Lynx?
That's where I do want to start because we've got major issues on men's basketball or in men's basketball right now with the Gophers not being able to finish a game against Rutgers the other night. The Wolves are rarely ever to be able to finish a game. Another fourth quarter meltdown against San Antonio. And the Lynx, free agency, all they do is sign all-stars. You mentioned McBride, she's a 3-time all-star, and it goes to show you if you build something, which they've rebuilt now after the championship run, they're trying to make another run at it. If you build something, which they have, by maximizing your draft picks, even though they're not number 1 overalls, they don't always have to be that. Nafisa Collar wasn't, Dangerfield wasn't. You can build something that people want to be a part of, and that's what McBride said this week. I want to go there because they win. It's a novel concept. We haven't had that around here for a lot of our teams, and that's why I think we should spend some time talking about that.
In what other sport is Minnesota a destination?
Not really.
To your point, that's what this proves. The notion that, it's Minnesota, it's flyover country, no one wants to play there. We're always going to have disadvantages in that regard. Witness the current weather and the snap that's coming, continuing. But the fact of the matter is, if you are viewed as having a franchise that has good tradition, is run well, and knows what it's doing, guess what?
People want to be a part of it.
People will come. It's possible, and that's the message that the Lynx story reveals to us, or maybe I should say confirms to us. And you mentioned, the basketball we've got right now. Talking about the meltdowns at the end of games, we've got 2 point guards who are important to their teams and both score, but they have to be aware of including teammates when those teammates are doing something. If you have teammates aren't doing anything, then I got to take over. But in the case of Russell and Carr, they both had opportunities to see, I got teammates who are scoring and helping. I've got to keep getting them involved. They both forgot that late in recent games, and it is costing the 2 teams.
Well, and along those lines, one of the reasons why I was pro bringing Russell here is kind of what we just talked about. It's hard to get good players, max-type players, as free agents that actually do want to come to Minnesota. That's why I know D'Angelo Russell's not perfect. Obviously, we've seen that. But the fact that they could get a guy of his caliber that had been an all-star, that had been part of a playoff team, I was ready to do it just because it's so rare that somebody actually wants to come here. Now we see he's got limits. he's not a perfect player, but sometimes that's kind of what you're stuck with.
Welcome back to Enough Said. Due to COVID, the Wild's games are postponed until at least February 9th. Several more players were added to the league's COVID-19 protocol list. They were supposed to play the Colorado Avalanche on Thursday night. They lost to the team on Tuesday. They've kind of been on this win-lose streak, and now they're just waiting to hear when they're going to be back on the ice, Dan.
Well, yeah, every time you think, well, we're getting our games played, look at some other teams that are running into difficulties.
Yeah.
How lucky are we? What's the next thing that happens? You get caught up in it. And so this, I don't think this is particularly surprising. The question is going to be whether the league itself revisits whatever protocols it has in place, if it feels like there are other steps that it could take. I know there's a lot of discussion about rapid testing, whether there needs to be more of that.
Yep.
The idea that you're putting players out there, they take a test, you don't get the results, and you put them out there. And
makes no sense.
Which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
Yep.
In fairness, also, some of the rapid tests, there's the people we talk to, including out of Mayo Clinic, say, well, not all the tests are 100% accurate. So I'm not totally surprised by this. I'm also not totally surprised by the team to this point. They're kind of, meandering. They had the nice start, then reality set in. Colorado routed them, and to me, it even though it's different people, and I know love Kaprizov,
yep.
And he's got a chance to be really good. They kind of look like they're kind of still that team stuck in the middle.
Yeah, stuck in the middle. Hopefully with a blueprint out of it this time around. A lot of guys on one-year contracts, a lot of guys that are transactional, and Kaprizov, we've talked about him a million times. I love the guy. But on the COVID, what's been interesting about all these leagues, I'm curious what you think about it. It seems like all of them, whether it's Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, maybe not as much, NFL a little bit, have kind of thrown out their first set of guidelines, almost like, let's see if we can get away with doing this to play a season. We're going to let players do this. We're going to let players do that. We're going to test here. We might not test there. Because they've all had stops and starts, and then we're talked about the Super Bowl in Block 1.
Right.
They had, kind of in the middle of the year, some issues, and they really tightened up their protocols and got to the finish line, which a lot of people were wondering, would they be able to do that in the middle of the year? So I'm wondering if this is like the NHL's false start, maybe even a message to the players saying, we tried to give here. We tried to say this is some things we could do. We got to be better about the testing. But if we want to get this in, and there's 40 games left or whatever it is, we do have to tighten things up because every league, it seems like, have had these false starts.
Well, I think part of the reason they've been way too cavalier, I'm guessing, is they get some pushback probably because players are saying, we've got no life.
No question.
What I think then the players have to understand is, you want the season or not?
Right.
If you want the best chance to get this done in unnatural circumstances, we're going to have to tighten it up. Baseball's battling real quick now on to me, the owner's idea of let's put it off the start of the season to the end of April made a lot of sense for the same reason. Players are saying, no, we're ready. We've already got our bodies in shape.
Yeah.
We can't ratchet it back down and go back up, which I think is going to be a mistake, even if there are reasons why generally the players' union might not trust the owners. Same thing, it almost has to be fairly draconian if you want to get to the finish line.
We're going to stay on COVID. The vaccine rollout in Minnesota has been a little messy, mainly because there's just not enough vaccine. The plan keeps changing. There's lottery now for 65 and up. Some trial sites are closing. Teachers are still trying to get vaccinated. A lot of kids back in the classroom this week. As of today, nearly 498,000 Minnesotans have received at least one dose. And remember, we have about 5.6 million people in this state, Dan.
Yeah, look, we've talked about this before. I'm not going to pound the table, and I'm not going to say why are we in the position we're in and why aren't we doing better. I understand that none of this is easy, and a lot of it is unprecedented, but I still think pushback is fair. And I think the biggest problem, frankly, has been messaging.
Yep.
I think there's been so many mixed signals about who are we emphasizing. Well, we're ready to go down to 65 years old, when in reality, you go to any of these clinics that allegedly are now getting all the shots because we're done after 1 week of using the lottery system, which all of us thought was going to last a while.
Yeah.
They're saying no, 75. And they may have reason to say it, but the point is, you give people different messages at different times. We're emphasizing age, or are we emphasizing teachers? If you want to bring teachers in, you know me, I've got teachers in my family.
Yep, so do I.
Value what they do,
yep.
and I believe that's the best chance to get our kids back. I'm all right with that, but then be honest with people and tell them, this is the way we're going to do it. Don't pretend that we're making it all about age. And I don't think that I think the rollout's been fairly mediocre in terms of the communication.
Yeah, communication is the biggest one. And what's interesting is it doesn't seem like they know what they want to emphasize.
True.
And there might not be a good way to do that. There was an interesting Wall Street Journal story late this week about that, of saying you start picking special interest groups, and I'm calling them that out of jest, but you start picking different essential workers,
right.
Whether it's teachers, obviously frontline people that are in the hospitals, whether it's people that are stocking shelves at grocery stores, all of that. It's like, well, then other people have their hand up and say, what about us? And then you feel like you got to go there, and you're just moving these chess pieces around. The Wall Street Journal basically said, the writer of it said, we should just go straight age and say, forget about it. We can't worry. We just got to go 75, 70, 65, 60, and see if that works.
We're always talking about following the science. That's what, in terms of most vulnerable people to serious results and death, it's on the basis of age. So we either follow the science or we don't follow the science, but let's be consistent.
Next up, Major League Baseball's regular season will start on time. You mentioned baseball a little bit earlier. Can you believe the Twins report in just a few weeks to spring training camp in Fort Myers? Meanwhile, Nelson Cruz signed a 1-year, $13 million deal. He's led the team in home runs the last few years and still rocking it at 40 years old. Talking about these 40-year-old guys tonight on Enough Said. Justin.
Yeah, hopefully they're writing our demo. Hopefully all the 40-year-old dads out there are watching the show and enjoying people we grew up watching. I'm a fan of the Nelson Cruz move. I'm a big believer in intangibles. I think the offense probably had enough to get around his production, which sounds silly given how prolific he's been the last couple of seasons for them. But I'm a big believer, even though we're not allowed in the clubhouse anymore as media members, of having a clubhouse presence, of having a guy that kind of sets the tone for the whole organization and for the whole team. And it appears, Dan, like Nelson has been that guy, at least on the offensive side of things the last few years. So when we found out there wasn't going to be a DH in the National League, it made sense that he was obviously going to be in the AL. We know it's comfortable here. He kind of gets to do what he wants to do. So I was all for it. The on-field stuff is great, but I am a big believer in, especially with this organization, which for about a decade had no internal leadership that we could really see. Yeah. Now it seems like they have one of the best in that regard.
But it's the best of both worlds, because this isn't just a guy who you just have around.
A ceremonial player.
The players love him, and he's
right.
good in the locker room at the clubhouse. He can still hit. I think they had to get him. I think they needed him. I don't think this offense was going to be good enough without him. And I like the shortstop, whose name now escapes me, but is a defensive guy. I love that, because this team defensively was not what it was once upon a time. You know me, I dream big. I say if we still, I don't think, have a true ace. I know a lot of teams can say that, but just once in a Twins fan's lifetime, it'd be nice to be able to step up. And they still, I don't think, quite have that. But they've made a couple subtle moves to the bullpen and their defense and Cruz that should be helpful to at least keeping them.
And it's lightning round time. First up, Amazon's Jeff Bezos is stepping down as CEO. After nearly 30 years, he will become the company's executive chair and says he will focus on new products and other initiatives. Dan.
I don't even know what to say. Is he worth, is it like 800 billion?
I mean, he got divorced, and in the settlement, his ex-wife became like a top 5 richest person in the world.
And how Amazon's 30 years old, right?
Yes.
Basically?
Yes.
Imagine, I mean, it boggles the mind to think that in basically a little less than 3 decades, he amassed this, not just this fortune, but this empire, this whole thing, this whole Amazon concept that
he's running the world.
Rules the world.
The focus is the cloud now.
He's basically running the world.
I'm envious and I'm jealous is what it is.
We're just a few days away from former President Trump's second impeachment trial. He's charged with inciting a mob of rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol last month. Trump just said he refuses to testify. Justin?
It feels like a long time ago now, all of a sudden. I was asked the other day, when's the impeachment trial start? I said, I don't really know. It seems like we've had other conflicts, other issues. I don't know how you feel, Dan. It feels like this one's going to go kind of much of the same. I know there was a lot of momentum early about some Republicans might do some things differently than they did the last time, but it seems like time and space have allowed them to kind of run away from that previous position.
Is it wrong? Well, I was going to say, is it wrong of me, because I'm always about the theater, to actually have wanted Trump to testify.
Oh, no, that'd be
I mean,
great.
I can't
And
even
I'm surprised he's
imagine
not.
what that might have been. And I guess I am too. You want to talk about spectacle? That
Yes.
would have been off
Next
the
up.
charts.
The House kicked Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene off both of her committees, Education and Labor, and the Budget Committee. The freshman Republican has a history of posting violent conspiracy theories. She posted today that she's literally laughing about thinking that Democrats are a bunch of morons and giving her more free time, Dan.
I'm almost left speechless.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a complete fraud. She deserves everything that she's getting in terms of losing those, as far as I'm concerned, committee seats. Although I understand it sets a precedent that might end up coming back and biting the Democrats. But she's so gutless. Now she's saying, "Well, that's QAnon stuff. I moved past that
Right.
a couple
Can't
of
we
years
just
ago,"
move on?
Which I don't even believe.
I know.
And it's almost like I'd almost wish she'd own it, not pretend that was in the past, because she's only saying what she said at this point, I think, to try to save herself. It's an embarrassment to the Republicans have to basically deal with that issue.
Next up.
And get it out of the way if they want to be taken seriously.
Well,
as
that's
a
why the Democrats are
conservative party.
doing this. You could say it sets a precedent. Like if you take care of your own house, so to speak, maybe they wouldn't have to do that so much.
Instead, they're busy, like in Sass's state, he's getting sanctioned
Right.
for
Next up.
standing up against the president. It's embarrassing.
Wayne Terwilliger passed away this week. He was 95 years old, big on the Minnesota baseball scene, coaching the Twins and Saints, Justin.
Yeah, and you'll see him if Herbeck's rounding first base here, probably with a fist pump. Seemed like a small, diminutive guy, right? I'm sure you spent a lot of time around him, Dan. And we use the cliche: a baseball guy, a ball guy's ball guy, a baseball lifer. The last time we had him on the radio, 2005, must have been in his 70s. He was coaching down in Fort Worth, Texas, in independent ball, which is incredible. I mean, baseball guy through and through.
Through and through, and served the country World War II.
Yeah.
Iwo Jima, the whole bit. He's
A great
one
life.
of the more likable. There's some of these baseball guys who don't ever, aren't usually managers necessarily at the major league level, but they're just always there.
Yep.
First base coach, third base coach, in the dugout. They're kind of the glue that
Yes.
make everything go. Twig was that kind
And
of guy.
finally, this is your 1 week warning to Valentine's Day. A gentle reminder, it's not this weekend, but the following Sunday, a week from the Super Bowl. The Wallet Hub survey shows despite COVID, people are still going to spend a lot of money. Guys, $231, and ladies, $101. So have you done your shopping yet?
Whoa.
I know. I don't know
Whoa.
why
Do
this
these
is
not
people
at that
know
level.
we're in a pandemic?
Yeah.
We're in a pandemic.
Well, you know what, though? A lot of people, their savings has gone up
That's true.
during the pandemic.
That's
they
true.
say
They
there's
wanna
more
feel
disposable
good.
income.
It's still fun to shop.
Yeah,
I
guess
understand.
it-
So that's dinner, that's jewelry, that's flowers, that's
think that's kinda
chocolates, that's
everything.
everything, I suppose.
It can't be dinner. Well, I guess it can.
No, it can be
depending on-
dinner.
You do takeout.
Well, and a lot of hotels are smart. They're doing
Takeout,
private.
yeah.
They're doing private meals in a hotel room, and then by the end of it, they say, "Why won't we just stay? We might as
you
well
a-
stay the night."
Are you a box of chocolates kind of gal, Lori, or no? Can you not eat that stuff?
I don't know. I think I prefer flowers.
Flowers.
Flowers
Yeah,
are
flowers.
Message
The old
received.
still a
roses.
mainstay. Yeah.
Okay, enough
All right,
said.
we'll work on that.
Thanks a lot.